Hi everyone, this is the tough one, when I have to do tributes. My name's Quinlan, this is Melbourne Musos, a Sunday Face Chook Live. Like us all, we all got kicked in the guts yesterday with the passing of, or the news of the passing of Taylor Hawkins. I'm usually my flippant, humorous, full self, but not today. What happened is I had, like so many of us, we probably had the start of a fantastic weekend. I went and saw a Viking metal band called Barbarian, and I love them dearly. And they're good blokes too. And I pulled an all-nighter to get the show up, ready for this Wednesday. Then we all heard the news of dear Taylor Hawkins. So I couldn't put it up. I was going to put, like every time I make a show, I put it up on Facebook and YouTube and everything else. And then it goes to Channel 31 for Wednesday night at 10 o'clock. I couldn't do it. I couldn't put it up. So I pulled it, and I'm going to do this instead. This is a tribute to Taylor Hawkins, and I have no frills or fancies. I might put a bit of trigger in later on. But what I really wanted to talk about is just the kind of people that Dave Grohl and Taylor Hawkins and the whole Foo Fighters family are. So fun-loving and everything, and they brought everyone with them, you know. They're Cardinia Park, that's how I call it, just a few weeks ago, and doing their big gig in Geelong. And look what happens now. So what I want to do tonight is do my best to honour him with what I know from his influences and everything. And most things are really very close. Things like, he always talked about Stuart Copeland. He talked about Budgie. That was a bit of a surprise. I knew about Stuart Copeland and Phil Collins because you can hear it in his sound, because one of the things about Phil Collins and the influence is that Phil Collins started up with Peter Gabriel the gated drum sound, that kind of... with Intruder off of Peter Gabriel's Melting Face album. And you can hear it in things like My Hero. You can actually hear it. Oh, that's the sound. That's the sound from Phil Collins. And I'll just start talking about that a little bit. I'll do a couple of things. Of course, I'll read his biography like I always do with these tributes. I've got to say, when I started Face Chook Live in 2019, it was not long after the passing of my last brother and a few other shitty things that happened during that time. It's almost indelible what happened then. And I think to so many of us, we're still grieving for even someone who's someone we loved who passed away 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, that kind of thing. It just looms large, like guardian angels on our shoulders. That's how it sounds, or that's how I figure it. As long as you keep thinking about them, they'll never leave you, you see. And that's what I started doing. I thought, I've got to play drums. I've got to get out of this hole. And I started doing this thing live, just camera mics and stuff. And then it was all going quite nicely and stuff. And the first one was Ginger Baker. And you could have a little laugh because he was a bit of a scoundrel, that kind of thing. But then it all started to happen, and then when Neil Peart passed away, that was one tough episode to do. And that's what I think about now with him. I'm going to get back to drums. That's the gated sound. Not that it's gated because it's on D.W. Tom's Doris. But over here, what happens is that Taylor Hawkins, if you have a look at his little concert toms, I've got piccolo toms here, but he had little concert toms there. Geez, they look like Neil Peart's thing. That's the influence there, and, that's what got me going there. And one of the things that happens, is that with the sideways... you also saw that in Stuart Copeland. You get that kind of... know, that kind of stuff there. Now, let me talk about that a little bit, because what I'll do at the beginning is I'll get a few basics out of the way and get into it. One of the first things is let's just talk about a good kick-ass rock drummer like Taylor Hawkins. Get your 4 on the floor down. Need a decent rim shot, like that. And then what happens is get that. And one of the things, he had this beautiful flow. I keep wanting to do it in the present tense. He has this beautiful flow. But what it is when you're seeing him play, big thing is using natural. His big ass China was about there, and everything that went with that. And just a good, solid, even rim shot, you know, that kind of thing. Good one. And it doesn't have to be from Rob Hurst level. He's one of my favourite drummers of all time. And what it is you can do it like what I often call a 6-inch punch, like that. So even with trad grip. Don't have to put your back out or anything like that. You're just a little flick. There it is there. You see, you just get that in. Now, once you've got your 4 on the floor down, okay, you want your couple of different things. One of the things you want to be able to do is do a kind of a 3-speed gearbox kind of a deal. So what happens is that you can have your normal beat. While you've got that, and go to halftime. So the rate is minims. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Back to normal. Hi-hat doesn't change. Everything's quavered. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and cut time. There it is. There's 3 speeds. You know, you've got that kind of thing, and one of the big things that I noticed with Taylor Hawkins, and you've got to understand that a band like Foo Fighters, they got the 2 best drummers in rock currently. You've got Dave Grohl and Taylor Hawkins in one band, just swap that kind of thing. Anyway, so what happens is that one of the big things that the Foo Fighters did is syncopation. And syncopation is the accenting of a normally unaccented beat. So what happens is essentially your normal beats are your 4 on the floor. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's your syncopation. They were great at that, and one particular one is All My Life. What you've got is all my life I've been waiting for something. And what happens is there's a little bit of, there's the syncopation, but I'd like to talk about Phil Collins and the gated drum sound. I've talked about that already, but what I'd like to talk about is a little Phil Collins trick. And Taylor Hawkins actually talks about this in one of the things that I was researching just today. How come I've got messages? Oh my Lord. And what goes on is that with that, there's an old Phil Collins trick from Genesis where Phil Collins used to play over the 1. So what would happen is I'll do it in the most basic ways. I'll just play a basic rock beat. So I'll get 1, 2, 3 and 4, 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2. So what started to happen, I did that, it was a bit messy, I'll get better at that as I go along. But what happens is that Phil Collins used to play over the bar. So it'd be like a fill-in that instead of 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1, 2, 3 and 4 it'd be something like 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2, 3 and 1E and a 2 and 4 and 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2, 3 and 4. So it'd be like a 5-beat fill-in and you come in on the 2. Now, with All My Life, there's a little bit of that. I'll do it very slowly first. So you've got that kind of, is a syncopation. And then when it comes into the syncopation, like 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, it feels like you lift it off the ground and boom on 2. So you get that bum ba 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 ba. As that flows over the 4 into the 1, you see. And there's that, so it's really quite interesting. When you're doing a fill-in, 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2. You come in on the 2, see. He was great at that. Taylor Hawkins and Phil Collins, you know, the thing. Now I'll talk a little bit about his life. And I'll go on there. I'll go with this. Oliver Taylor Hawkins, February the 17th, 1972 to March 25th, 2022 is 50. Was an American musician widely known as the drummer for the rock band Foo Fighters, with whom he recorded 8 studio albums between 1999 and 2021. Before joining the band in 1997, he was the touring drummer for Sass Jordan and for Alanis Morissette, as well as the drummer in the progressive experimental band Sylvia. In 2004, Hawkins formed his own side project, Taylor Hawkins and the Coattail Riders, in which he played drums and sang, releasing 3 studio albums between 2006 and 2019. In 2021, he formed the supergroup NHC with Jane's Addiction members Dave Navarro and Chris Chaney, where he also took on lead vocal and drumming duties. The band's sole album is due for release this year in 2022. Hawkins was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2021 as a member of Foo Fighters. He was voted Best Rock Drummer in 2005 by the British drumming magazine Rhythm. There you go. Oh boy, I'll come back to the rest, but there's a little bit of that there. What I'll talk about now is a little bit about, I've talked about the beats, I've talked about 4 on the floor, 3 speeds. I think most of you know about that, but this is something special about Taylor Hawkins and the way he was able to get songs together with Dave Grohl and do what they did. And, you know, looking at different things. The influences really loom large when I'm talking about all the people that we love together. You know, Phil Collins, Stuart Copeland. Budgie was one. I'm very happy about that. I didn't know that bit. Oof! There you go, Susie and the Banshees. Budgie, okay. I've talked about Budgie so often over the years, you know, that kind of thing. Anyway, and Neil Peart, and there you have it. One of the things with Neil Peart, there's 2 things I'd like to bring up with Taylor Hawkins and Neil Peart, because they do loom large, and there's pictures of them together. It's just, you know, I'd go fanboy too. And what happens is that the left side, or my left side, the Taylor Hawkins kit, it looks like you got that from Neil, you know, that kind of thing. And there it is, you know, coming up here and going down like that sort of thing. I have different purposes here for this lot, but it's still the same kind of thing, you know, you can do that. However, in a rock context, the name escapes me because it only just came to my head now, but when I went and saw the Eurythmics in the late 80s, they had this wonderful drummer, I believe his name might have been Ollie someone, all that, but he had this wonderful groove, and his left hand, he was doing this. but his left hand was on a cymbal like a china. There's your syncopation. And then what you start to do with different things is that instead of this, how about we put it up on Mr. Piccolo 1 here. All these little offbeat, jagged little things, you know. And because Foo Fighters were like one of the big bands, you know, still are, I hope. I will see how we go with that. I don't want to go down that track. But the thing is, things like times like these, you know, 7/4 in the verse. So you get, it's like 4 and 3. 1 and 2 and 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. That, and then it goes. And there's a sneaky little songwriting trick where they go. It's like that will break. And it's like, whoop, bang, there it is. What genius songwriting, you know. And there's that. And then what goes on is that when we're talking about things like that, I'm talking about the piccolos over here, but don't forget the Taylor Hawkins. When you have a close look at the kid, he's got 2 big-ass rototoms on the right-hand side, so he's got a whole bunch of stuff happening. So, you know, he's got his 2 4-toms. I've got the second bass drum over here, but he had 2 rototoms there, so it was like a little 4, a little square of the big drums. So when you're starting to get into that, that's back to a budgie come Rob Hurst kind of deal where you can start to do. That kind of stuff. But then, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, there's that syncopation coming in on the 2, a la Phil Collins. You see, so this is why everyone loved him as far as being a drummer. I mean, my God, what a kick-ass drummer, you know. And he just kept tipping his hat to his influences. None of this bullshit of, oh, it's all mine, mine, mine. I did it, me, 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 me. You know, we all get a bit tired of that. What happens is that you wear your influences on your sleeve. You love them and you pass on as much as you can. That's what he was able to do. When I research shows like these, you know, there's always a beautiful surprise, and that's one of them. Is the fact that, my God, he loves all the guys I like, you know, and so it's easy talking about him. And I wrote something on Facebook earlier today. I just had to go down to the doggy park. And I let the pooch roam free. Found a little bit of shady spot under a tree somewhere. Probably sat in a pile of... you know, never sit down in a doggy park. And... whatever. Anyway, one of the things is... and I just wrote. You know, I just wrote something. I'll put it up later. And I'll do it here. But that's something I hope you can get from that. I'll talk a little bit more about him. Here we go. All right. Early career. Hawkins played in the Orange County-based band Sylvia before he became the drummer for Sass Jordan. I don't know who he is. Sass Jordan, anyway. From June 95 until March 97, Hawkins was Alanis Morissette's drummer on the tour, supporting Jagged Little Pill and her Can't Not tour. He appeared in the videos for You Ought to Know, All I Really Want, and You Learn. I believe I've got that album. I should have had a look. I didn't. I'm sorry, my apologies. But I believe he was not on the album, but he was on the tour and the clips. I think that's what was happening. When you've got an artist like that, usually they get some kind of seasoned pro for the album, and then let the dude go out on tour kind of thing. Anyway, Foo Fighters. After touring through the spring of 1996, Foo Fighters entered a Seattle studio with producer Gil Norton to record its second album. Conflict during recording reportedly erupted between Dave Grohl and the drummer, eventually causing the drummer to leave the band. I don't want to name him actually because that's putting him down a little bit, that kind of stuff. It's a bit sad really. But apparently he didn't get kicked out. He left of his own volition. There you go. So I hear from, funnily enough, Taylor Hawkins with one of the interviews. And there it is. So there you go. And the album Colour and the Shape, that's the one where Grohl played all the drum tracks, was released on 97. Grohl called Hawkins, an acquaintance at the time, seeking his recommendations for a new drummer to join the band. Grohl was under the impression that Hawkins would not leave Morissette's touring band, given she was a bigger act than Foo Fighters at the time. To Grohl's surprise, however, Hawkins volunteered to join the band himself, explaining that he wanted to be a drummer in a rock band rather than for a solo act. The band announced Hawkins would be its new drummer on March 18, 1997, and history was made. Dave Grohl and Taylor Hawkins were like brothers. I was given Dave Grohl's book, The Storyteller, for Christmas. So it's still fresh in my head because I was just reading it through January. And the one thing you take out of that book is that Dave Grohl and Taylor Hawkins were like brothers. They loved each other. Whoa! Last night even with Marcus and Drew, we were doing some gang vocals. I was doing wah like that for Marcus' new song, and it came up. And I did it. I also did it just last week. Is the beat with no name, and I did it. It was the show that's just been on, and it's the 4 3s and 2 2s. So you get but now I've got to do it again because of Taylor Hawkins and in a Foo Fighters song and stuff like that. And one of the classic things. So you might be, kicking along. There it is there. Fairly raucous. 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 1 2. Did I do enough threes? 1 2 2. 1 2 3 4 1 2. So you're 4 3s and 2 2s. That's what goes on. There you go. When I was doing the Viking show, what goes on with that is that there's some Scandinavian songs that's the rhythm for the whole thing. On their drums, and it really is just that. You get that 1 2 3 4 1 2 so on. But I just did the Foo Fighters version. Let's call it that. One of the things that goes back to Stuart Copeland too is one of the tracks is Making a Fire. And it's a great play on rhythm. You can tell there's two drummers in the band. Wow, what they cooked up is the song itself. You could easily count it in 3/4 or 2 bars. 2 bars of 3/4 making 6/4, but you're counting in threes. That kind of thing. So to be playing a normal rock beat. I'll keep it basic. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Someone like that. And what happens is that that's synchronicity. That's Stuart Copeland. If you listen to the title track of the Synchronicity album, that's the one where there's the Stalker song on it. Now, sort of every breath you take, I'll be surveilling you. And what goes on is that that is the Synchronicity track. It's 6/4, but Stuart Copeland is playing 4/4. He's quite famous. I've said it before on the show. I wouldn't have brought it up if Taylor Hawkins hadn't played it, if you know what I'm talking about, because I've said it a few times on the show over the years, is that one of the famous early interviews with Stuart Copeland, he was a little bit off the cuff with it, a little bit, and he sort of said, I don't worry about it. Stuart, what do you do with odd times? I don't worry about odd times. What do you mean you don't worry about odd times? Well, they always come back every second bar. He's right. Pick a number. Let's do 5. Okay, I'm going to play a normal rock beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1. What that is beautiful for is that when you're listening to some prog rock kind of stuff, you know, especially in the early 70s and things, even now, that's what it is. But if you're just playing a one-bar phrase and it's always that timing, it can sound a little stilted sometimes. Here I am, a prog head, and I'm sort of saying things like that. I'm certainly not meaning to cast aspersions on anyone who's playing through it, but what goes on is that one of the little tricks of the trade is that you can actually have your drummer just go sail straight through on 4/4, while everyone else is playing some weird-ass shit over the top, you know, so you can start doing, you know, the bass player's playing in 5, you know, the guitarist is playing in 7, and if it's any kind of avant-garde, the saxophone player is blowing his nose. Frank Zappa, 1968. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Back on the 2. There it is, you see. You can make any number up you want. You know, make sure you give the saxophone player a hanky. There you go. So there's that. There you have it. I'll read a bit more. Oh, in addition to his drumming with the Foo Fighters, Hawkins also provided vocals, guitar and piano to various recordings. He's a talented bastard, wasn't he? He performed the lead vocal on a cover of Pink Floyd's Have a Cigar. 2 versions of the song were released, one as a B-side to Learn to Fly, and another on the Mission Impossible 2 soundtrack album. He later sang lead vocals on Cold Day in the Sun from In Your Honor, which was later released as a single, as well as a cover of Cream's I Feel Free. Back to Ginger Baker there, which appeared as the B-side of DOA and on the EP 5 songs and a cover. Hawkins also sang lead vocals for the band's cover of Joe Walsh's Life of Illusion. It keeps on going down. It reads like everything, a who's who almost, you know. Brian May gets a mention. Everybody gets a mention. He loves Roger Taylor of Queen and Chad Smith of the Peppers and all that. One of the things about Roger Taylor, and I'll talk about that and back to Neil Peart again. One of the things Roger Taylor is famous for, it's on the doco, it's everywhere, you should know it. If not, go out and find out. But one of the things about the aforementioned rim shots and all that is that Roger Taylor of Queen was famous for also doing a little hi-hat spurt at the same time. So you go... There's that kind of thing, you see. It's quite famous. And he's talked about it on one of the, I think it was, what was it? It was one of the classic albums, I think, for Night at the Opera, I think. Anyway, Marcus, you'll be able to tell me. You know well about that. You brought that up with me about 4 or 5 years ago. I said, oh, yeah, I know. And there's that. Now, with Neil Peart, one of the little tricks, because I'll bring this to a little bit of an end pretty soon. I could go on for another hour's show, but I really do want everything on. I'm getting a bit tired of cutting 15 minutes out, and it sort of disjoints the show. I've got to learn to either make a two-parter, ask 31 to give me an hour show, or just shut up. I think most people would prefer the latter than the former. Anyway, so what it is that here's a little Neil Peart trick, and Taylor Hawkins also takes it on. You can see him do it sometimes too when you're watching him live. Get your hi-hat pumping like the good old John Bonham. Tap along. Single stroke roll. Then when you're doing a right hand on the hi-hat and they're doing it in unison, if you go to a single stroke roll, every left hand, when placed on the hi-hat, will catch it open. That's what it is. Neil Peart is big on that. You can see it with Neil Peart, and you will also see it with Taylor Hawkins. So there you have that. This is all about influences. This is about the great man, and everything that we love, and why, you know, the musical weekend, the global musical weekend, just went to dirt. I had a wonderful night on Friday. I mean, I made a fool of myself yelling Matilda, my favourite wife, you know, my favourite song, my favourite barbarian song, Viking metal. I pulled an all-nighter to get it going, so I was a bit rough all day Saturday, but I finished it all off and had the show ready to put up, which I usually do on Saturdays. And then the news came out. I literally pressed the button over there, I walked out, I put the phone on, and that was the first thing I saw, and it was like getting punched in the guts. It was one of the... sometimes you know when someone you love is going to be passing away, a long illness, let's say, or anything like that. But when you hear about a 50-year-old drummer who only was just here, just down the road in Geelong, and 3 weeks later, this happens. And yes, I know, you know, the DRUGS, and I know I didn't read it out, but yes, a couple of decades ago, you know, he OD'd, and yes, but that doesn't take away the fact that he was loved. That's what it is. That's where you get the and those kinds of things just take you away from where you are, where I used to be, you know, that kind of thing, you know. And I think we all have parts of our lives where we'd like to put them in the drawer and all that. And it's songs like when I was growing up, it was Jethro Tull and Led Zeppelin and Sabbath, and you know, some of those songs spoke to me. And like I said today, and what I'm about to do, funnily enough, is some things, some albums you just didn't need to buy. I never needed to buy Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. Everywhere I went when I was 13, 14, 15, it was on. It was on everywhere. It was coming out of a car radio. It was coming out of Big Brother's bedroom, you know, sort of thing. Money! It's a gas! And all that. And then all of a sudden, you know, the third verse had come up. Don't give me any of that do-goody bullshit! And we yell it out outside the Big Brother's door, I remember that. And then Mum would come in from the kitchen and say, oh, you naughty boys, you've got dirty mouths, wash it out with soap. For 73, 74, it was like, oh, he said do-goody bullshit, you know, that kind of thing. There was no stickers, you know, warning stickers on the album. It was just Pink Floyd, mate. And, you know, we revelled in it, you know. Remember Aqualung? It was huge. They were in the top 5 bands in the world. Snot running down his nose. Oh, he said a naughty word. He said snot. Like that. It was amazing. But for Pink Floyd, I went off the track. I nearly went down into a Jethro Tull episode. But what happens is, oh, by the way, with Jethro Tull, Barrymore Barlow. Oh, all the toms on the left, just like I was saying, you know, before. Anyway, but what it is when you're getting things like that, through the 70s, there were albums you never needed to buy. And like what I'm about to do to finish off, is that was the Foo Fighters for me. And they were that kind of a band in the 90s, into the noughties. And they're everywhere. Like they were in Geelong 3 weeks ago. They're just everywhere. And like I said, I just get in the car with my mate. You know, we're going to go and see a gig. We're going to go and do something or do a recording thing or whatever. We did gang vocals last night. I had to go, wah, wah. I felt like James Hetfield. Yeah! You know, in the ghetto. Yeah! You know, that kind of thing. But what it was turn the radio on. I guarantee 2 songs in you'll get Everlong. It just is. You know, they're the band, you know. They're the band that my friend Tim Colopy actually passed a story on yesterday because he rang me up as soon as he heard the news because his son met them, not backstage, greet and meet, pay the money to meet them or anything. They were on hire bikes. And Tim's son had a Dream Theater t-shirt on. And this guy just pulled up on a bike at the red light and said, that band's better than ours. And he looked up, it was Dave Grohl and Taylor on the neck, Taylor Hawkins. That's a great story, I just laughed. That's the kind of people. They'd play that, they'd do a sneaky pub gig, little set. And then Jimmy Page at Wembley doing rock and roll, you know, 1 month later. That's the kind of people they were. That's why we loved them. I'm going to finish off now. My name's Chris Quinlan. It's a kind of a Face Chook Live I didn't want to make, but here it is. I had a couple of shows lined up. I figured the Barbarian show that I did, I just laughed. I love them. I laughed all the way through, everything. They're good musicians, they're good bands, they take the piss, they've got great songs, they're fantastic. I just laughed all night. And I laughed through editing. I've gone, this is brilliant. And it gave me the in to talk about Viking music and Scandinavian and Celtic stuff. And it was brilliant. I loved all the connections. And then the smile was wiped off my face because there's no way I could put that show up yesterday after hearing the news. No way. So I'm going to finish off with this. And I'm going to put a patch on. That I go to a lot. You'll know it. I'm not doing anything particularly new for people who know.
When I was coming up, there were some albums I didn't need to spend my schoolboy pocket money on. Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon, Eagles, Skyhooks and many others, all pouring out of every second 1970s car radio. You go to a mate's house and there was Pink Floyd's Money coming out of Big Brother's bedroom, and hearing the yell of, "Don't give me any of that do-goody bullshit!" The line came up in the third verse. Every time! Of course we all joined in, then get told off by the mate's mum. I remember a mate's big sister playing Neil Young's Harvest album for me. As a 13-year-old, I was in awe. Not the album, the big sister. And so it goes. The world's musical weekend turned to shit with the news of Taylor Hawkins. I never needed to buy a Foo Fighters album. Just last week, mate Marcus came by to pick me up for a gig. Radio turned on and bang, Everlong. Come home from a gig, cup of tea, Tim Tam, and turn on Rage. Doink, times like these. Foo Fighters were global, but they played local. They'd get a local punter up to play drums, or someone else up to sing. They did sneaky pub gig sets in between the stadium shows. They rode rental bikes around town. Then you see them pump out Zepp's Rock and Roll with guest Jimmy Page at Wembley. A student gave me Dave Grohl's Storyteller book for Christmas. The one thing that stood out was just how much Dave Grohl loved his mate Taylor Hawkins. I think about that now. I think back to people like Neil Peart, who lost his wife and daughter within months. Then it gets personal for all of us because we get the same kick in the guts when we lose someone so special. The music that drowned out the drunken yell. The music that pulled us out of the gutter. And when you heard it from a car radio, a big brother's bedroom, or a mate's sister's cassette machine, you knew you weren't alone. That's the thing with people like Taylor Hawkins. Sometimes they get closer to you than your own family. I'm typing this on my phone at Doggy Park with a beautiful pooch in my Birth Drums Death t-shirt. It's old and faded and a bit smelly. The t-shirt, not the dog. Driving here, I put the songs on in the car and I could hear the Phil Collins, the Stuart Copeland and the Neil Peart influences he always talked about, and how he went about syncopating the beats. So I'll go home now and play the Foo Fighters songs I never needed to buy. Then I suppose I need to set up another show to another drumming hero who has gone to the great gig in the sky. To quote Pink Floyd.